Welcome to Mike Text It Out. I'm Mike, and today I'm going to be doing a little bit of 3D printing. Now, 3D printing was the bomb like 4 or 5 years ago. It really took off. It's still around. It didn't take off in the way that I expected it to, but it's still great. It's just kind of cool to be able to print little knickknacks at home. The reason I'm doing this video is because a friend of mine asked me, this was months ago, if I could 3D print him a headphone stand. Now, I'm on Amazon right now, so if we look through Amazon, they're not that expensive. So it's not like you couldn't buy one for a few dollars, but he already knows me and I have a 3D printer, so I was like, sure, I'd make one. And then, of course, I forgot about it. And then like a week or so ago, he reminded me, he was like, hey, are you still gonna 3D print this for me? And I was like, yeah, just send me. I was like, just go online, like on one of the websites like Thingiverse, and find something that you want to print, and then I can print it for you. So he already said it to me months ago, and I forgot about it, so it's completely my fault. So from an economic standpoint, you can get a stand like this for $8.59. But if you can already 3D print one at home, and then you can customize and then paint it, that's kind of cool. That's kind of a value within itself. So I'm just gonna go through and show you how I do it with my DaVinci Junior 1.0. It's an older printer. It's kind of like a starter printer for kids. Well, it was back in 2015. They have a way newer model now. I'm still rocking the same. No wireless or nothing. Just the vintage DaVinci. So this is the file that he sent me for the headphone stand. As you can see, it's pretty cool. The only issue that we might run into, the DaVinci Junior does have a size restriction. So I don't know if this is going to be too big. I mean, I can resize it, but if it's too small, it kind of defeats the purpose, because then the headphones are going to be, touching the desk. They won't be like within this picture. So let's go ahead and download these files. Here I have XYZ software, and I just use this because it has the appropriate size for my printer already built in, so I just use their included software because it makes sense. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and open this up from downloads. So right away, it's too large, so we're going to have to resize it. It is like way too big. So if I zoom out here, so yeah, this would just be like protruding outside of the print area, which we obviously can't do. I'm going to auto resize it this time, and let me delete that one. So this might not work. I'm still going to print it, and we're going to see what happens, but it's not looking good, y'all. I'm going to be honest. All right? Might have to go on Amazon and buy that stand. Now, what I do, you can connect the printer via USB to a computer, but I just take the SD card and pop it in the computer and just put the file up there. And the printer has an SD card reader built in. And to me, it's a lot easier to do that than to have it connected over USB. That way I can kind of place the printer wherever I need to. It doesn't have to be close to the computer because it is a pretty big printer. I don't know if this is going to turn out to be the size that I want it to be, or that's going to make it usable. But we'll have to see. I don't think it's going to be tall enough, but we'll see what comes out. So I already saved this to the card. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And we're just going to go ahead and eject our card. I'm going to go over to the printer. We're going to put it in there. We're going to see what happens. All right, everyone. So we are here at the printer. We have our SD card that the file is on. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that in there. And then the first thing we want to do is get the printer set up to print. Now, a lot of the newer, well, not newer, more expensive printers, this was a cheap printer at the time. I think I paid like $300 for it. A lot of them have a heated bed. This one does not. So the first thing we have to do is, there is a special cover that DaVinci sells. That's pretty much tape that you have to put over it. Or not DaVinci, XYZ Printing. So the printer came with a few, and then you can order the one from XYZ Printing. But I just use some regular old tape because that's pretty much what it is anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and get my print bed ready. Alright, I had to go ahead and redo that first piece because it was too short. Some of the bottom is exposed, but it's probably not going to print there anyway, so it's not a big deal. But the reason that I mentioned earlier about the heated print bed is with this, when the object is being created, you can sometimes run into an issue where it slides around and that ruins the whole print. So if you don't have a heated print bed for 3D printing something, it's just recommended to use a glue stick and just kind of put a bit around the print area to keep the object in place. And it's not a big deal because once you pull it up, it is going to be stuck to it a little bit once it's done printing. But once you pull it up, it'll be fine. So I like to get it nice and goopy because I still have had objects slide on me before, even with putting the glue up here. So I use a pretty good amount when I do it. And this is just my experience with this particular printer. So it may vary, or if you have one, it may have a heated print bed. So again, may not be that big of a deal. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. All right, and so we are on. So I'm going to go ahead and select build from card. And it just gives you the names of all the files that you have up here. And here we are at the MakerBot headphone stand. So I'm going to hit OK. Of course, the first thing it's going to do is it's going to check the file to make sure that it's valid, because it is possible to accidentally put a file up there that is too big for the printer. And now the build is starting. The fans are ramping up, so we shall wait to see if this thing actually works. Wait, hold on. So everything wasn't all flowers and daisies after this part. See, what happened was when I did this initial print, my filament was a bit old, so I didn't realize that filament kind of has a shelf life, and filament is what you use, is basically the plastic that you use to print with. And since I haven't printed anything in at least 2 years, I just had issues with the filament breaking. Then I looked it up online, and it's like PLA does absorb moisture, so it can cause issues if it's too old, and then they recommend not to keep it over a year. So I ended up having to order some new filament on Amazon. So between ordering that and working, it was about a week before I was able to get back to it. And then on top of that, my original print, the first part of the video was way too small. So then I redid the print. I downloaded a different software called Mesh Mixer so I could cut the original print in half. And even then I still had to shrink it a bit to fit in my printer. And then I printed that and everything was going super smoothly. I was there sanding and getting ready to glue everything together. And then I broke the top part of the print, which honestly was a little bit too small anyway, so it wasn't a big deal. But I still tried to glue it together, and then it turns out that my super glue had gone bad. And it was really, super glue is a bit watery. It was like really goopy, and I was like, well, I'll just try it anyway to see if it worked, and then it definitely didn't work. So then I ended up having to go buy new super glue, and I had ended up breaking the top part in a second place, and so I just threw it out and ended up reprinting it. And then when I reprinted it, it was too big because I forgot to size down the top part. So the bottom part was too big to print as is, but the top part was not. So I got this top part that was too big, and then at that point I was just 110% over it because it was like over a week of dealing with this. And so I just ended up taking my failed first print, the top that was too big and the bottom, and I just ended up combining them, and that's when I got this. And then I took this and I got some cheap paint from AC Moore because they're closing, so I got this big jug for less than $10, a black acrylic paint, went ahead and painted it, went ahead and finished it, and honestly I like the way that it turned out. I mean, granted, it's not for me, it is for my friend, but I think it looks pretty cool. So let's have a look at it. Alright, and here we are with the completed 3D print. So originally when I did this video, it was really going to be a comparison of, is 3D printing worth it price-wise than going online and buying one of these cheap headphone stands for like less than $10. And I'm sure that if I added up the costs of everything, based on how many prints of these I can make, it probably would be cheaper. But the one thing I learned from a lot of the issues that I ran into with this print was like a lot of the 3D printing excitement, like back in 2015 when I first got my printer, it's really died off. Like if I look on YouTube, a lot of the videos were from 2015, 2016, and there were some in 2017, but that's kind of when it started to die off. And I think that when 3D printing got popular, everyone was like, oh, this is going to be a useful thing around the house. And I've printed a few things, but I don't really use it regularly. And the thing is, even if it is cheaper to make this than to buy it, there's still a labor involved in creating this. Like if you want to paint it, like if you want a certain color, or like in my instance, I have a smaller printer, so I had to print it in 2 parts. I had to use software to splice this print and then print the 2 parts. And honestly, the first print took 9 hours. Like when I printed the whole thing together, when I broke the top. Then reprinting this by itself was 3 hours. And then of course you gotta take in time, like I painted this, so you gotta wait for paint to dry, and then you have to seal it and wait for the sealant to dry. So there's a lot of labor that's involved in this, and so that's why the price comparison wouldn't be fair. Like, yeah, technically parts wise it's cheaper, but you're not taking into account your own time and labor. And this is not to say that 3D printing is bad. What I came to the conclusion about with 3D printing is I think a lot of people thought that it was going to be a thing where, like, oh, I can make some simple household items, or like, you know, like one time I made a knob for my crock pot because I lost it, and it did save me a few bucks from having to buy one. But it's not really that. It's more right now, it's kind of for people that are into crafting, who are more creative, who kind of want to model and create their own stuff. Like, yeah, there's value in being able to do something like this if you already have a 3D printer. I think people realize that they couldn't go out and just buy a 3D printer to do this, just to make stuff like this, because it wouldn't really make that much sense. And then you also have to have the skill to work with 3D objects. Like I'm able to tinker with it a little bit. I've created a few things, but I definitely don't have the skill to create something this elegant. My friend actually sent me the design for this, and I just printed it out. And that is one of the things that's great about it, is you can find a lot of stuff that people created and, you know, print it out and use it. But a lot of the appeal is kind of being able to make and customize your own items. It's not really a good comparison to be like, okay, I could get this online for $7, or I could print this, and it might, in total, like when I divide everything up, the total cost of filament and paint and all that stuff, maybe it was only $4 to make. That's not the real reason that you 3D print. It's a whole creative process. And honestly, this thing was a nightmare, but through all my mistakes, I actually feel like I ended up with something cool that I like. I mean, again, it's not for me, but I think it looks pretty cool. I like the way the top's bigger and it kind of pokes out. And then it also made more sense because when I shrank it down, it also shrank this part. And this part's already pretty small, and you're going to be putting a headset up here and wanting it to balance. So I'm fine with the way that it turned out. I showed it to my friend, at least I showed him a picture of it, and he said it looked good. So hopefully he will be happy with this. And I think that 3D printing is going to stick around, but as for right now, it's going to be a hobbyist thing. And also a lot of businesses have gotten into it because, you know, like for instance, McDonald's was looking into it for their kids' meals because it might be cheaper to print kids' meal toys than it is to have them made at a factory, or to be able to customize them when they fly at the store. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but it is something that they've looked into. Anyway, through all the frustrations with this, I really had a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun making this video. It's just kind of like something that I had to do, that I've been putting off doing for months, and I finally did it, and I enjoyed it, and I'm going to get this to my friend later this week. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe, and always do at least 2 things at the same time. Peace.